Hey everybody, and welcome back to the third video related to Firebase and authentication. So what I'm going to do here, we're going to do in this video is the login, very similar to register. We'll use some of the codes that we've done before, but it's going to work in a very similar way. So first, let's do the activity indicator that start animating because we're going to the server. The next thing we're going to use the auth.auth function that sign in, and then one of the option here is sign in with a username and a password. So I'm going to take that, and very similar txt email dot text, and then we need to unwrap that, and for the password txt pass dot text, and for the callback and completion, very similar, result and error. And in the code, in the completion handler, either we're gonna get an error or we're gonna get actually the actual user. So need to do that here. If we look at the previous example, this is what we did, and then we have the code already to handle the error processing. So I'm gonna copy this, and then we'll change it in a minute here. So the first thing we need to do, we need to check if the code, if we have an error or not. So that's what we did previously. I'm just going through it instead of retyping it, make this one is a little bit faster than the previous one. So what we've done, we checked if we have an error. If we have an error, we try to find the error code of that error. So if we have an error, we take the error code. All right, so I call that error. I'm just gonna make that here. So we check if we have an error. If we have an error, we check, we get the actual error code from Firebase, and if it is successful, then if it was not successful, we don't know why they couldn't log in. So I'm going to say this message say cannot log in, just simply cannot log in for no reason, right? Cannot log in, there's some error, right? Otherwise, we need to check what are the error scenarios that we have. It could be wrong email, could be wrong password. I'm gonna do very similar to what we did previously in the registration process, all right? So let me just fix this and then we'll modify it. All right, so what are the possible scenarios here? So if I check the error code, the first thing we need to do is that we need to check maybe the user is not found. So the email is not found. So one error possibly is user not found. All right, so that's one error. And we say, please, the message would say, wrong user ID, or email ID, please register. You can just say, please register, or ID not found, please register, right? Okay, so that is if the user is not found. What about other errors? Maybe the password is not correct, right? So maybe the password, wrong password, right? So invalid information, instead of that, invalid login. Okay, we don't want to say where the error is, so it could be the username and the password, right? But here, if at least it will tell them the ID is not found, but we don't want to say the invalid username. We'll just say invalid login, login password or ID. Right? But we know it is the password, but that way, if we tell them it's wrong password, they try different ones. Okay, and the other options, other scenario it could be is that maybe the user is disabled for some reason. So if you look in here, you type in dot, and then you'll see user is disabled for some reason. The account is not valid anymore. So you can say, please contact administration, right? So I'm just showing you a different scenario. Help desk, right? Otherwise, the default case will just say, could not log in, same thing, right? If we don't know what the error is, it says could not log in, and that will display the error and display the error. Else, if this is okay, else that means that we don't have an error. So this is for the switch state. This is all for the, let me just put that indent a little bit. So this is all if we have an error. Else we don't have an error. And then the message should say, welcome back. All right. Okay. So just repeat it again. We have similar function, authenticate, auth, sign in, password and email. And then we get, if we have an error, that means there is a problem with the logging in. We convert that error to an error code. We get the error code, and based on the error code, we display the proper message. That's important in your applications because you want to handle different scenarios. And then at the end, if we don't have an error, we display the message. And the last thing we do self.activity indicator .stop animating. All right. So that's all related to the login. All right. And then if we save it and compile it, run it, we'll see what happens. All right, so if I go to the user action, if I type in the email, I believe the email, we had 11aaa@abc.com, and then the password was 123456, and then if I do log in, invalid password or ID from our here, so that's the problem, right? Now, if I try a different email, just delete the M from there, and if I do log in, invalid ID not found. So if I fix the problem, and I believe that's there, then we do log in. We say welcome back, right? So that's how we do the login. Okay, very similar to the previous video, but you can see it's starting to become easier. The next video, I'm going to show you how we do log out and how to keep track of the status of your application. Now, typically what happens here, obviously, after if it is valid login, you transition to the main applications, whatever. But this is how you can take into another screen, but at least we know that this user is valid. Okay, and I'll show you that. It'll make sense in the next video. All right, I'll see you in the next video.